Honda has been developing electric vehicles for quite some time, and while you might think of Honda as primarily a company focused more on hybrids than battery electric vehicles, its history of EVs goes back further than you might think. Back when the EV1 and the RAV4 EV, the first generation, were rolling the streets of California, you could, if you were really lucky, lease a Honda EV+. Fast forward a significant amount of time, and you were able to lease the Honda Fit EV. That was a small, funky battery electric version of the iconic Fit hatchback, and it was an incredibly fun car to drive. Then Honda made the Honda Clarity. It was a full-size battery electric sedan that basically shared exactly the same platform with its siblings, the Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid and also the Honda Clarity fuel cell sedan. Now, I didn't ever get to drive the battery electric very much. I did drive the Clarity fuel cell, and I also drove the plug-in hybrid. And while they weren't cars that got me super excited, they were pretty competently executed, despite the pretty terrible range of the all-electric Clarity EV. But this is a new generation of Honda EVs, and it's built in collaboration with General Motors. This is the Honda Prologue EV. It's Honda's first mass-produced battery electric vehicle for the North American market. It's launching about the same time as the European Honda E and Y1, and while the two vehicles are very different, they represent Honda's future strategy for an all-electric world. And while reviews of the E and Y1 in Europe haven't all been that glowing, and many reviewers prefer the now discontinued Honda E City hatchback, I'm excited to get behind the wheel of this vehicle and see just if it really does feel like a Honda, or if it's a General Motors platform wearing Honda makeup. Let's find out. While I'm on the freeway, let's go over some of the technical aspects of this vehicle. Then we're going to get on some twisties and I'll be able to give you a real idea of how the car drives. This vehicle is built on GM's Ultium Platform. It's part of a long-standing agreement between Honda and General Motors that has given Honda access to GM's Ultium Platform, the same platform that underpins a whole slew of new vehicles from General Motors, from the Hummer EV and Silverado EV, all the way through to the Blazer and the Equinox EVs. And yes, that does mean that this car essentially is running on the same platform as the oh-so-problematic Chevrolet Blazer EV. And I'm going to admit, I had some fears about driving this vehicle because, to all intents and purposes, this is a Blazer EV, at least in terms of underlying tech. It has an 85 kilowatt hour battery, it has an all-wheel drivetrain that outputs 288 horses, and its sprint time is nothing to get super excited about. It's enough to get you out of trouble, 7-8 seconds based on my own experiences here today, but nothing super sporty. Although I should point out that the top trim variant of the Honda Prologue, as well as the next trim level down, both come with a sport mode that remaps the throttle for a more engaging and spirited acceleration. Of course, because this is a press launch event, Honda has put us in the range-topping elite trim variant of the Prologue, and that comes with an 8-way fully adjustable driver's seat, plenty of lumbar support. The seat cushion is nice and comfortable. It's not too firm and it's not too squishy, and it's very nice behind the wheel. And the steering wheel is classic Honda. It's just the right size, not too big, not too small, and it's got some substantial size to it, but not so much that you feel that you're driving a comically large vehicle. This version of Prologue also comes with a very excellent head-up display. I'm sure we'll be able to tell you more about that when we have a chance to drive this car over the course of a week, but it's very easy to set the brightness and contrast, and I've got my head-up display showing me how many miles to my next turn-off, which, as it happens, is 5 miles. Despite being built on GM's Ultium platform, however, Honda was very, very eager to point out that while the drivetrain and the battery pack may be General Motors, and while there is an OnStar button up here, that's also part of the agreement with GM, much of this vehicle has been touched by Honda. In a good way, you understand. That means it has its own in-car infotainment system that includes Google as standard, but unlike GM's system, which forces you to eschew Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you can get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in this vehicle, and it works perfectly. I'm using Apple CarPlay wirelessly right now from my iPhone 13 Max, and it's just working. There's also a really nice digital display in front of the driver, which I've set up right now to give me my map, as well as other information about the road around me, i.e. the maximum speed limit, how much power I'm using, and whether I'm in the center of my lane or not. Interestingly too, in an attempt to appease I think everybody, Honda has made this car capable of true one-pedal driving, or at the other end of the spectrum, a regular automatic car feel with very minimal regenerative braking liftoff. Because it's based on Ultium Platform, you do get the Regen on Demand paddle behind the left-hand side of the steering wheel, and you can use that to give yourself some extra regenerative braking. But right now I have set it for maximum regeneration on throttle liftoff. So I could lift my foot off the throttle and the car would slow down pretty quickly. And before I come off the freeway and give you some real-world driving thoughts, I do want to mention one thing about this car and the Ultium platform and its charging capabilities. While the Ultium platform en masse is theoretically capable of up to 350 kilowatts and 800 volt charging, because this version of the Ultium platform used in the Prologue is a 400 volt battery pack, this car can only charge at up to 150 kilowatts. That is a very important distinction to make, because I think a lot of people will look at this vehicle and go, it's Ultium and Ultium is 350 kilowatts. And the answer is no. Sometimes Ultium is 350 kilowatts, and sometimes Ultium is 150 kilowatts. Once you get off the freeway and onto country roads like this, the car feels quite different. On the freeway it's very refined and very well behaved, and it definitely feels like a Honda in terms of the fit and the finish and the way it rides. Come out onto a twisty road like this, and I'm definitely aware that this is a much bigger vehicle than it feels on the freeway. That's not to say it's badly behaved, it's just to say that it's work, at least if you want to make good progress. For what it's worth, I think the eGMP platform from Hyundai Kia gives a slightly smoother ride on equally rough roads. But I also have to remind myself that the chassis of this vehicle, well, it's an American chassis. It's a Chevy or GM chassis that feels like it's been to a Japanese university and has softened its edges slightly. It's worth noting that you might hear some extra cabin noise right now, and that's because we've got GoPro cameras strapped to the outside of the vehicle, and that always tends to make the car sound louder than it actually is. But when the cameras aren't in place, the interior is very quiet, especially on the freeway, and you can hear the faux engine noise emanating from under the hood. I'm really enjoying how the single paddle driving is set up to give me true single paddle driving, just like I have in my Chevrolet Bolt EV. And of course, because this is a GM platformed vehicle, it has that same regen on demand button that I am so very fond of, but I know not everybody is. Despite this vehicle's sizable heft though, as long as the road is smooth, it tackles mountain passes and twisties rather nicely. Here in wine country, it is a bit of a lottery as to whether you find a nice, well-paved piece of road or whether you find one that is riddled with potholes, and right now we seem to be blessed. I've already talked about the head-up display being very clear and also the fully customizable driver dashboard. Depending on which mode you have it in, you can have a variety of different information available at your fingertips. My favorite mode is the one that displays the map information using your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto Map and displaying it in front of you alongside pertinent speed information in a little bubble on the left-hand side of the dash. How I've got it set right now though, it gives me some more run-of-the-mill information. So it tells me information about my radio station or the music I'm listening to. It also tells me whether I am charging or discharging the battery using what has now become quite a ubiquitous Powerball idea. It goes up if you're pulling power from the battery and then drops below zero if you are refilling the battery. You also get 2 trip information screens, and I can tell you that of the 47 miles that I've driven right now, which has been a mix of freeway driving and country road driving, including some not insignificant hill climbing, I'm averaging 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is not the most efficient that I've seen of a vehicle. But, and I should be very clear here, Honda is wanting to be as transparent as possible about the range capabilities of its vehicles. It says that in the depths of winter, if the weather is really, really bad, you could see as little as 160 miles per charge. In the summer, that's going to be closer to 300, and it really does depend on how you drive and where you drive. I think more automakers need to be that transparent about what their vehicles can do in different weather. Very few are. Like so many other modern EVs, the Prologue's platform is built in such a way that there's an incredible amount of interior cabin space. The rear seat is a very pleasant place to be. I should also point out that this version of the Prologue has a 110 volt inverter as standard built into the car. There's also plenty of convenience features. There are USB sockets throughout the vehicle. USB-C, not USB-A, I should note. And there's also an inductive wireless charging pad for the driver or front seat passenger, whoever gets there first. Another worthy point to note here is that unlike a lot of modern EVs where everything is touchscreen based, you get actual physical discrete buttons for certain things in this car. The climate control is all physical buttons, and you get dual zone climate control with a good old-fashioned dial that you can set. Of course, it's a digital dial, but it does make it easier to reach down and adjust the temperature without having to find the right menu item on the touchscreen display. Talking about the controls on the steering column though, it's worth noting that the gear selector is a little different to ones I've used in the past. The other thing that I am ecstatic about is the fact that this, being a crossover, has an actual factual tailgate wiper. Yes, people of the Pacific Northwest, rejoice. It has an intermittent wash wipe function for the rear window, and that makes life so much better. That said, all of the windscreen wiping controls is on the left-hand stalk, as well as obviously your directional indicators, and it's a little busy. Just a little. Another thing that's really nice to note about this car is the fact that there's not really much in the way of piano black accents. Yeah, there are a couple of glossy plastic pieces, but for the most part, this is a very lovely matte interior, and it feels like a grown-up's car as opposed to someone who wants all the shiny, shiny fancy. And that's how I feel about the tech in this vehicle. I know that General Motors and Honda have both been pushing much more tech content in their cars over the last couple of years. And it feels like Honda has got the mix between drivability and in-car smarts well sorted. I don't really have to go digging for things that I need to access on an everyday basis, and that makes the whole driving experience so much better. That grown-up interior feel is also emphasized by the very competent Bose sound system that is in this high-end variant of the Prologue. And we listened to some drum and bass on the way out from our hotel, and it managed very good clarity, even at, pretty high, near maximum volume levels. It even shook the door panels a little bit. If you like your bass, that should make you smile. So what do we have here? Well, we have a vehicle that has been refined in a great many ways by Honda, and as I said earlier, while I haven't driven either the Chevrolet Blazer or Chevrolet Equinox EVs, the impressions I'm getting from people who have is that this is a far better car. And I think it shows. General Motors have some kinks to iron out. I think Honda has decided to play it safe with its information and technology setup. The screen seems reasonably quick and responsive. There are lots of options for the customer to choose exactly what navigation system they want to use and how they want to interact with the vehicle. While $47,000 starting price is expensive, it puts this squarely in a very competitive price range to some of the other vehicles in a similar place in the market. And I think that this could function very nicely as a family car for people who don't necessarily want a high performance EV, but they want the Honda badge, they want the Honda prestige, and they want to go electric. Sure, I would love this car to rapid charge faster than it does, and the range is not necessarily the best. Energy efficiency is also not the best. If you want a super energy efficient car, this is not going to be a vehicle for you. But if you need a vehicle to lug your kids and your dogs and everything else around, I think this could be a really good purchase. You know, I really shouldn't be a fan of this car. I really, on paper, shouldn't like this car. Personally, I mean, it's a big SUV. It's not necessarily got huge amounts of power, and I do like a car with a little more oomph to get out of its own way when I need it to. It's a car that I personally wouldn't necessarily want to buy. But the more I've driven it, the more I've felt like maybe I would. There's a lot of bad press right now about General Motors Ultium Platform. It's got some issues that need to be ironed out, especially when it comes to the Chevrolet Blazer and the Chevrolet Equinox. But it feels like Honda's engineers have taken a vehicle that is an okay platform and turned it to something a little more special. The interior of the Honda Prologue, it feels It feels refined in just the right way to make you feel like this is a car that I can imagine living with every day. It's not perfect, but it's livable. All of the things that were criticized for the Blazer EV have been addressed with this car. The infotainment system has nothing to do with the glitchy system that GM used in both the Blazer EV and also in the Cadillac Lyriq, which again had many problems. And granted, today I've only spent 2 or 3 hours driving this. And as is often the case, first drive reviews are incredibly hard to do, especially if you've got to do B-roll and all that other stuff. But this is a car that I want to spend more time with. I want to get this on a week-long loan before I tell you what I really think. And you'll know if you watched last year's review of our Nissan Ariya that I loved it at first glance, and then Kate and I became a little less convinced as time went on. I think the Honda Prologue is going to be the opposite. I think it's a car that over time I'm going to get to like more and more. It's got cool features that make this car livable. Like the fact that you can adjust the rear seats. You can adjust the rake of the rear to give you more load bay space. The fact that this car has a charge port door at the front is useful. At least I think it is, because it means you can pull in frontwards and you can plug in and you see the charge port door as you're getting in the car to drive away. The infotainment system is intuitive and you get a choice of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And yes, while it feels heavy on some twisty roads and I would like it to handle differently, and I would like it to have maybe 10% more power at the wheels, and I would definitely love for it to have better range, better efficiency, and by golly, better fast charging. 150 kilowatts in 2024? Not necessarily the best on offer. But I keep coming back to what this offers as a proposition. And unlike the eNY1 in Europe, which is getting terrible reviews, I think this could be the big brother that might just make it big. Thank you to Honda for providing Transport Evolved with airfare, meals and lodging for both myself and also Em, our camera person. And especially thanks to Honda for agreeing to let us bring him along, because normally when we do a first drive report, it's just the person in front of the camera and I have to do all of the work to set up the cameras and everything else, and it tends to be more stressful. And I think you'll agree the end product with Em around is far, far better. So thank you to Honda for making that possible. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and hopefully we'll get our hands on a Honda Prologue for a longer period of time, some point later this year. Now, if you'll forgive me, and once all these cars have gone past, I've got a sunset to watch. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling right by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel every month through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure that we can remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just under $11 a year. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Carl B. Knapp, Stoyal Pankoff, Smithers, John Strott, Kelly, Joseph Valentinetti, John Flint, and Nate Fritz. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your week of fame. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is also below. And if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store also in the down below. This month, we're campaigning for an end to charging deserts with an amazing new t-shirt design by our in-house artist and animator, Erin. Get yours today by heading to our Redbubble store. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll enjoy this video, but we think that this one is also well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.